I really think that the biggest mistake I've seen around here is oversimplifying AI demand and the architecture behind it. Many people assume that AI demand is infinite, so just build. I don't think that's the case. We are currently entering a capital efficiency phase, right? And the winners in this phase are going to optimize power strategy, secure long-term energy partnerships. They're going to align their development with real workload demand, and they're going to avoid speculative overbuilding. AI infrastructure, in case you haven't noticed where the capital is flowing, is very capital. Hey, everybody, this is Bill Kleyman from Apolo, and you are watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Hi, it's Joshua Feinberg from the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast, and today I'm welcoming Bill Kleyman. Bill is the CEO of Apolo, based in the Chicago, Illinois area. Bill, welcome to the podcast.
I am excited and honored after seeing your wonderful face and all of the wonderful people that you've had a chance to interview that I'm finally here in this seat, right next to you, pointing that way. There you are, and sharing this opportunity in this moment to have a wonderful conversation. Josh, thanks for having me here.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm honored to have you here as well. I'm super curious, Bill, when did you know that data centers were going to be your thing? And in particular, that you were going to take such a front and center leadership role in guiding the industry?
Wow, you are just like step up to bat, and here's the pitch, Bill. I like that, Josh. My story kind of begins from an interesting spot of when did I start working with data centers, right? Interestingly enough, I was born in Kyiv, Ukraine, and in Ukraine, my brother used to compete in telegraph competitions like Morse code, right? And I was like, 7, 8 years old, and he'd plop me down on his lap, and he'd put these big cans on me, and he taught me Morse code, and it was the coolest thing in the world. Here I am, talking to people across, Europe and the continent, with beeps and boops. Now, obviously, I understand it was Soviet Ukraine. We did have a phone on the wall. We didn't just use Morse code to chat with people. But that was it. That was my spark, Josh. That's when I really learned about, communications and, these cool things that bring people closer together. And yes, it was actually with Morse code. Coming to the United States in the early 90s, I am one of those few people that if you ask a room full of folks if they planned on being in the data center industry, I'll sheepishly raise my hand. I'm what's known as a geriatric millennial. I don't know why they have to call me that. That's unnecessary. You can just call me an older millennial. That's perfectly fine. But right out of college, I actually got a network engineering and telecommunications undergrad, got an MBA in marketing and another master's in information security. But right out of college, I was really fortunate that I got a couple of Cisco certifications, a couple of Microsoft certifications, and then 2005, I'm working in like data closets and network rooms before like data centers were even like a word that was widely used. That's it, man. Honestly, in 2005, I started working with these smaller data center facilities, nothing major, putting together racks, architecture, working with good old IBM AS400s, and everything else in the middle. That was it, Josh. Honestly, I've always wanted to work with architecture, physical environments and architecture. I've got a full rack in my house that I love to mess with. It's got all this gear in it. My brother is more of the coder. He's more of the person that'll sit in front of a computer screen and create really cool lines of code in different languages, and that's more his style. I love the physical architecture side of it. The complexities of the network, the challenges of the build, the creativity of what an architecture could actually look like. That was always my jam. So the answer is right out of college, man. I was working in the data center space and seeing it grow and evolve. And I'll tell you what, before your next question, I've been in the industry for well over 20 years now, and I'll tell you the last 24 months, I've seen more evolution in this industry than I have in the last 2 decades of me being in this space. What a ride.
So what's an interesting conundrum is I'm probably about a half a generation, started a little bit earlier in the early 90s, in the very early days of PCs and Windows. My first brush with a data center was the computer rooms at Merrill Lynch. They called them the Barsky rooms at the time when I was doing enterprise IT support. But like, it's such a weird thing. You come across college students now and they ask for your advice. And it's not like, okay, what would you do if you had the DeLorean and you went back to when I was starting when you're starting your career? What do you tell someone who's in high school now? They're 4 or 5 years away from the job market. How do we even know where to point them?
Wow. You know, it's funny you bring up the DeLorean as an example, right? Now, if you remember Doc Brown, 1.21 gigawatts of power. If you say that to somebody right now, it's like, oh, so that's like the size of one of my campuses. Whoa, 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 what? Like, we don't get out of bed these days unless it's a gigawatt opportunity, right? But like, my favorite tip is, you know, for anybody listening that's new to this industry, is trying to get into it. I need to impress upon all of you that the data centers and facilities that we're seeing right now are already going to be a little bit different than what we've seen in the past, even just to the extent of now we're not just power consumers, we're now power producers as well. There's a really interesting study that was done recently from CleanView Project Tracker, and then they're saying that, you know, we've got gigawatts, upwards of 46 data centers right now are combined in a capacity of building 56 gigawatts to plan out their future behind the meter power architecture. Now, that I want to make sure that I answer the question more properly of what, you know, young people, students, it does anybody who's trying to enter this industry understand the physics of who we are and what we do before you try and capture the vision, because data centers today, they're not abstract cloud constructs. They're not, right? They're constrained by things like power availability, cooling architecture, land and interconnect, and obviously the big one, capital structure. So if you don't understand megawatts, rack density, things like power usage effectiveness, PUE, that's a fun acronym. This industry is full of them. Time to power, you're just not going to be able to credibly operate in this space. So my advice for anyone coming into this industry is spend some time with facility teams, and you can ask me about it. There are wonderful organizations out there that can help facilitate that kind of entrance. So like folks like Nomad Futurists, folks like Infrastructure Masons, organization I work very closely with, which is AFCOM, which oversees the data center world and data center world power events. Learn how power actually flows. And I'm going to leave this really interesting thought with you. You need two things to be successful in the industry right now. You need power and you need bravery. And the second part is very introspective, right? It's kind of funny, haha, but it's more about you understanding just how far outside the box you have to think, and really understand how the measurement of what goes inside of a data center has scaled at such an unprecedented level. You know, this industry rewards people who respect and understand the infrastructure layer. So my big piece of advice to you is look at power, cooling, land, and interconnect, and most of all, understand where that capital is flowing and how it's going into our industry.
Yeah, it's a super fascinating perspective for someone that's younger towards the beginning of their career. What about people that are more around our age, your age, that are kind of in that mid-career pace, and maybe they weren't as fortunate to pick the perfect employer who's been the disruptor as opposed to the disrupted, and they bounced around a lot. And this whole idea of the person who picks the perfect career in their 20s and spends 30 years in the same company seems to have seen its better days. So what would you do if you run into a colleague that you haven't seen in a while at a conference or the airport or coffee shop, and you sense they're really stuck and they're trying to figure out what their next move should be, especially on the commercial side, especially in account executive, project manager, solution engineer, marketer kind of roles? How would you tell them to kind of figure out what the next best place should be in their particular case to get their career back on track?
Oh my God, these are such wonderful questions, Josh. Really introspective ones where, you know, you're I don't want these to be scary answers. I really want to make sure that folks that are listening to this, you take a moment, grab your gold nugget, whatever you want to use to capture this moment. But Josh, you ask a very pointed question. So on my board, on Apollo's board, there's a really brilliant gentleman. His name is Peter Gross. You know, he's considered one of the godfathers of this industry, right? And he had a really funny saying that the data center industry loves innovation as long as it's 10 years old. All right.
I think Peter gave me some hockey wisdom too. Skate to where the puck is going, if I remember correctly. The Wayne Gretzky quote.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's other brilliant folks that follow that sort of methodology. Chris Crosby, one of those as well, a dear friend and a mentor of mine. You know, we don't have 10 years. You blink and, like, you know, 10 months goes by, it feels like. I'll leave with some food for thought based on this question. So my former boss, Rob Roy, I worked at Switch Data Centers for about 4 years. And it was an extraordinary time for me personally to grow and understand what it takes to scale an organization. When I started at Switch, we were a 4.5 billion publicly traded organization. And I was really fortunate to be on the team that saw them scale and ultimately sell for $11 billion and go private with the Digital Bridge and IFM transaction. But in that sort of framework, Rob, most recently, we were just at the Schneider Electric Innovation Summit, just literally a couple months ago, and he's sitting up on stage, getting interviewed by Axiom. Which kudos to Rob. I haven't seen him on stage too often. I love seeing him out there because he's brilliant. He's got a lot of really fun things to say. And one of the things that he mentioned really, really, really echoes your question, Josh. Like, what should people kind of think about? They're in the middle of their career. How should they perceive this? And I really recommend reskilling towards AI infrastructure economics. And that might be kind of a high level term. So the industry is beginning to shift from what we've known in the past to really all these new acronyms, all these new kinds of definitions. And up on stage, the reporter from Axiom asked Rob, like, what do you think the biggest myth is in the industry? And Rob gave it a thought. He's like, I think that we're all lying to each other by thinking that racks are measured in kilowatts. And I'm like, whoa. Then I'm like, that's a profound, provocative statement, but it's nuanced because it makes sense, right? We don't even know what the rack's going to look like. Ultimately, we've got Jensen Huang coming out at GTC saying that they're going to release the NVL 576 at 600 kilowatts per rack. We don't have time to get into what that actually means because the latest AFCOM State of the Data Center report points out that the average rack density in my industry, in our industry, is 27 kilowatts per rack, which, by the way, kudos. That's actually not bad. Good job. We're increasing. And just to give you a measure, Ken Patchett, who's currently at Lambda Labs, brilliant human being, he worked at Microsoft, and I was up on stage doing a keynote talk with him, and he's like, Bill, in 1988, the average rack density in Microsoft, one kilowatt per rack, right? You could buy a Walmart fan, put it in front of it, and blow it with, air convection and optimism, and you'll be fine. It'll be plenty cool, right? So my big recommendation for folks in the middle of their career, really kind of trying to wrap their heads around this, the industry is shifting from kilowatts per rack to performance per watt to tokens per dollar per megawatt. So if you're looking to build on your career on a traditional colocations, now is the time. Right now is the time to understand, really, in my opinion, 4 core topics. GPU and supply chains, right? Very, very important stuff. In the AFCOM report, we just learned that about 66% of respondents are experiencing supply chain constraints, of whom 15% experience some type of an outage because they didn't have a part or a component. You have to look at liquid cooling architectures. Over at Data Center World Power, this past year, we had net new people exhibiting this stuff. Look at this. Pipes, fittings, gaps, gauges. And they're like, Bill, our business went from 0% to like 35%, and we don't know what's happening. So liquid cooling architecture, designs around those kinds of environments, that's going to be really important to understand. I think AI workload economics, that's another big one. Understand that there's different types of economics out there. And then here's another one. Grid interconnection, timeliness, timelines. I can talk, I promise. Grid interconnection timelines and how that actually can impact architectures going up, because honestly, power is the biggest constraint right now in terms of entering this market. What we're seeing, this reboot is not about, abandoning experience. Please understand that, right? I got this network engineering telecommunications undergrad, and to be honest with you, like 65 to 70% of what I learned is still pretty dang relevant to what I'm doing today. The best operators become hybrid leaders, right? So AI infrastructure fluent and AI literate. So know the infrastructure, be fluent in it, and also be very literate in the AI game and all those things that wrap around it.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.
It's really interesting too when you mentioned having the computer lab in your own office. To be able to basically simulate what a data center looked like. I started to see that come up about a year or two ago on the podcast with like sales leaders and executives at colo firms, where the account executives and account managers that didn't want to be obsoleted, that didn't want to be brushed aside and disregarded by their prospects and clients, were going, not only setting this equipment up, typically the hand-me-downs from their employer in their home office, but they're going out and get training and certifications that were equivalent to like the entry-level, intermediate-level certifications that their clients have.
That's brilliant, Josh. But those are some of the best individuals that can have a business acumen, be able to understand and have a conversation on the business level, but also have a technical understanding of what's actually happening within that environment. And then it's fun. It's fun to tinker, right, man? You pop the hood, you get your hands dirty. You understand how things work, how things flow. There's no better way, I feel, to learn about what's happening in the industry than to actually look at the physical systems impacting everything.
Makes a lot of sense. Bill, what do you think is the biggest oversight or biggest mistake that leaders of companies similar to Apollo, or maybe even a step or two, that growth maturity beyond that, like what are they getting wrong? What would, if you could spend a half hour giving them some insight as to what you've discovered along the way that could really benefit them?
Wow. Okay. I hope whoever's listening to this is sitting down, because Bill is going to we're going to push some boundaries here today, Josh. And we're going to make some statements, some good LinkedIn quote bait, right? I really think that the biggest mistake I've seen around peers is oversimplifying AI demand and the architecture behind it. Many people assume that AI demand is infinite, so just build. That's not. I don't think that's the case. We are currently entering a capital efficiency phase, right? And the winners in this phase are going to optimize power strategy, secure long-term energy partnerships. They're going to align their development with real workload demand, and they're going to avoid speculative overbuilding. AI infrastructure, in case you haven't noticed where the capital is flowing, is very capital intensive. And so discipline within managing and working with that capital really, really matters. The second mistake is underestimating workforce challenges, right? High density AI sites require different skill sets, different kind of personnel. Those are really the two kinds of things that I think I've seen as a mistake or as an error. AI demand is not infinite, right? We're going to see ebbs and flows in what this market looks like. AI isn't going away. We're going to continue to see it develop. We're going to continue to see us learn from it. But if I were to give you an analogy, and some of the folks that are listening to this presentation may have heard me say this again, but we live in a world that just discovered oil, but hasn't invented the internal combustion engine. We have all this raw material, but we don't really know what to do with it. And just like oil, it's in everything. It's in my clothes, it's in the red M&Ms, it's in medicine, it's in shoelaces. But where we are in the industry today is, how do we go from a barrel of oil to a shoelace? And not just any shoelace, one that can actually tie your shoe and not cost as much as the dang shoe store. So, we're at a point right now where we're truly understanding what this technology can do. And obviously, the first response from humanity whenever we discover anything new is, can we light it on fire? And the equivalent of that is ChatGPT. But what we've quickly understood is ChatGPT is not the answer for everything, but rather just a subset of these powerful AI solutions that are out there. So, my biggest, point here is that, know what you're building and what you're building around. Obviously, focus on the use case and the end user. And then, my gosh, try your best to partner with good people to help you with that workforce challenge.
Do you see any indications that the industry is any closer to solving not just the workforce challenge around the generational issues, but the reinvention of roles, as certain roles become falling out of favor and become more automated and more marketplace driven? Do you see any great solutions happening in the industry for taking people that are more mid-career and helping them figure out what a good next step would be, short of the blanket advice of go become an electrician or a plumber or something like that, which seems to be the default advice to anyone that's saying, gee, college has gotten expensive?
Yeah. That's a really great question. When we take a look at this industry, there's always a lot of things that you can ultimately learn. From a skill set perspective, one of the highest workforce demands right now are known as multi-skilled operators. These are individuals who are capable of talking about engineering, physical architecture, but also understand the business requirements and demands. When we take a look at sort of the data center industry in general, look, yeah, we need skilled tradespeople. We were just at the Advanced Construction and Prefabrication Conference. I was very fortunate to be on stage with the amazing Amy Marks, and we were the co-chairs of the Data Center Day program for that Advanced Prefabrication Conference. And we had a room full of electricians, room full of tradespeople, and all of them were asking very similar questions. What does what does our industry look like? How do we possibly catch up to demand? There's many certifications that you go after for the first time that we're seeing. Many university systems now offer direct programs, certifications around data center specifics. What's interesting is that right now we're working with a Texas A&M school to develop our first ever capstone program, not for technologists, but for policy graduates and undergraduates. Literally, these students don't know about tech, but they're going to be writing the rules for our data center industry. So now we're giving a capstone project to do something special with that. And I'm really proud of that program because it's a net new approach to working with this group of individuals who are going to potentially dictate what our industry looks like. So anybody out there, sort of listening to this and trying to figure out what can I do next, what things can I explore, fearless curiosity is going to be your friend really here, right? You're going to need to be in an environment where you can fail and get up even faster. And I truly believe that, just opening your mind in terms of some of the things that you can learn, especially around the area of AI, that's gonna help you quite a bit.
Final area I wanted to get your take on is where we are headed next for someone that's growing a company like Apolo. How do you think your daily, weekly, monthly routines change 24, 36 months out from now?
Wow. I use AI as a tool, and I firmly believe that you won't be replaced by AI. You will be replaced by someone who knows how to use AI. And just to kind of give you an idea, real quick, Apolo is a very unique organization, right? We have three core pillars to us. So we have about 5,000 GPUs that we manage, right? So they're not in Amazon or Microsoft, they're in privately held data centers. We have the Apolo platform. Think of it like a mini Amazon, right? Where you can come in, do all your development, all your work. And then we have something equally important known as Launchpad. And Launchpad is our app delivery architecture and mechanism where we will, help organizations actually use some of these very, very valuable applications where, the goal isn't to replace anybody. It's to give them back something finite, right? Which is time. And that's really, really special because we refuse to build an elephant on a unicycle. We will push our clients and the people we work with to actually create something special and something very, very valuable. By the way, if you go to our website, apollo.us, that's with one L, and you click on Launchpad, all those apps, AI workflows, and agents, none of them are out there just because they're nice to have. Each one of them are driving business. So for me, how my routine has changed, I have seen three evolutions, I think, in my day-to-day life since the proverbial dam of ChatGPT broke open. I use it a lot more for predictive modeling, right? So if I'm doing research around like capital risk or market expansion, looking at power demand, I use it for sales intelligence, right? So really great personalized engagement tools without losing authenticity and what that looks like in different kinds of marketing campaigns. And honestly, I use them for operational co-pilots, these really powerful AI agents and workflows that give me, really great forecasting capabilities and this vision into the infrastructure layer. I love using these kinds of tools for strategic thinking, communication, infrastructure, and visualization. But that's what these are. They are tools, and we haven't really seen them necessarily replace people, but ultimately give back a very valuable thing, which is time and ultimately productivity.
So in the same way that someone needed to be web literate and PowerPoint literate and email literate a generation ago and LinkedIn literate 10 or 15 years ago, this is the next competitive frontier for people, especially that are in client-facing roles.
Yeah, Josh, and there's no sugarcoating it. There's no bubble. There's no bubble. This isn't going away. We have firmly entered into an era of where you and I communicate with data in a completely different way. What's fascinating about this, that every single person listening to this right now, you're a user of generative AI, whether you like it or not, right? If you've gone on your favorite search engine, whether it's Alta Vista or Ask Jeeves, or if you're feeling feisty, even Google or Bing. See, I did that bit one time at a high school, and they're like, Ask Jeeves, is this guy asking his butler for directions? What is that? So I've stopped doing it for anybody who's like in high school. But like in that situation, right, if you go to your favorite search engine, you ask it a question, it's not a blue link anymore, is it? Right? That the blue link is now further down. The response is now fully generative AI. That's how fast this has changed, right? This is how fast we are on this AI bandwagon as a tool and a mechanism for us to talk to this data and get wholly original responses. So Josh, to your point, it's not going away. And the sooner that you embrace this powerful tool to help you in life, in work, in anything else, the faster you're going to see just how powerful it is and what it can do for you.
You can even use it as an advisor to tell you what to do next. Here's my LinkedIn profile. Here's what I'm trying to achieve. Map out the plan.
Use those tools, but my biggest recommendation, everything that we've created so far has a human in the loop element. It always does. It has to. You got to review this stuff. You can't just put it out there. The models hallucinate, right? They will put information out there that they think it's right, even though they're the ones that just created it. So you need to make sure that you always validate whatever you put out there. But yeah, Josh, to your point, these are amazing mechanisms and tools to help people leverage technology to its fullest.
Bill, this has been fantastic. Really appreciate you taking the time today to join the podcast. I'll make sure to include links to Apolo US and to your LinkedIn company page and to your LinkedIn as well for anyone that wants to follow you or reach out. I've been speaking today with Bill Kleyman, who's the CEO of Apolo and involved in numerous awesome organizations throughout the global data center ecosystem. Thanks so much, Bill.
Thanks so much, Josh.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.